to access that information via the internet, and they can do that. Two other quick announcements. First of all, we invited the selectmen, the Bennington selectmen, as well as other board members from SVSU to come to this presentation. Without any further, Kristen, would you like to get up and go at it?
Oh, you want me to stand?
Well, no, you can stay right
It's gonna
there.
be even.
It might be easier to stand at that
You have to
back
stand
microphone.
here. Oh, well, can she use this microphone?
Yes.
No, if she's here, she's right in line.
This works, right?
All right,
Appears to remain
hold it.
there.
We'll just,
Yeah.
wherever you're comfortable.
Especially without having the data tables available to you, it's gonna be easier for me to have all this stuff in front of me.
Sure,
Rather
that's
than
very
stand and
good.
juggle.
Yep, good.
So hi, I'm Kristen Harrington. I'm one of the school-based clinicians at Mount Anthony Union High School and one of the assistants to the principals. And thank you, Tim, for inviting me to come talk about the Youth Risk Behavior Survey.
Excuse me, Kristen. The microphone in front of you is not an amplifying microphone. It's direct to the TV, so you'll just need to raise your voice so that everybody can hear you. This does not amplify you, it just
Right.
takes it to.
Okay.
One other thing, those people that are sitting there and craning your necks, if you'd like to just move around so that you have a direct view, it might be more comfortable for you. Yeah, sit over there or just pull a
Move
chair
the
up.
chairs closer. Thank you, Kristen. I'm sorry.
Sure, that's okay. And please, if I'm not loud enough, like, give me a motion, and I'll try and remember to project. So, the Youth Risk Behavior Survey is a tool that schools use. In Vermont, we give it every 2 years in the month of February. The Department of Health gives us a window of when we can do it. And so we have been participating in this since, I believe, 1993, every 2 years. So the data that we currently have is from February of 2013. The reports were distributed, I think we received them in January. It was a little late this year, but this is the data we'll be working with for the next 2 years. For your reference, school data is available online on the Vermont Department of Health website. All supervisory unions have the option to have their data included there or not. But if you go to the website, you'll find any school's data that you want to look at. The site that you would want to go to is healthvermont.gov, okay? The survey is designed by the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. While it's not perfect data, it's the gold standard of student risk data that we have available to us. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention runs reliability checks on the data. It's considered reliable and valid. The survey covers seven different areas of what's considered risky behavior. So that includes personal safety. That's things like wearing a helmet when you ride your bike, putting a seatbelt on, alcohol, tobacco, and other drug use, attitudes and perceptions about alcohol, cigarette, and marijuana use, sexual behavior and orientation, body image, nutrition and physical activity, and then a youth assets section. Now, I should also say the survey, there's two different surveys. There's one for 9th through 12th graders, and then there's one for 6th through 8th. At MAU, the 6th graders who attend the middle school here participate in that survey. The 6th graders out in the other districts do not. But that both pieces of data are available in the report. So what I thought I would focus on today is some areas that might be of particular interest. In 20 minutes, we can't go over all 7 areas. Each area could be talked about for an hour. So I thought I would highlight a couple of sections. And then I told Tim that if there's any area that after you have an opportunity to look at it, or if something comes up as an important community issue and you'd like me to come back and talk in particular about a certain area, I'm happy to do that. So The first thing that I thought we would talk about is the alcohol use reported by students. And again, I apologize that I'm going to have to rattle numbers to you. I'm going to focus it on the total percentage in the data. When you look at the report, you'll see that the numbers are broken down in the report by grade, also by gender, and it also indicates where we are statistically different in the Vermont state data. Okay, so for the ease of conversation, I will highlight the total population number and let you know whether we were higher or lower than the Vermont state percent. Okay? So the percent of students who said that they had ever drank alcohol is at 56%. In the past 30 days, 27% of our students said that they had drank alcohol. That was lower than the Vermont state number. Vermont state was at 33, so our students are reporting it lower. I also went back and looked, if you're interested in what our 2011 data is. So I'm not going to report that, but if that's a question for somebody in some area, I do have some of that information available. So if we look at cigarettes, students who have ever smoked a cigarette is at 22%. In the past 30 days, 10% of our students said they had smoked. That number was also lower than the Vermont state average, and which was at 13%. The other piece of data that I thought was really encouraging about our students in the area of cigarettes is of students who smoke, 55% of our students have tried to quit. So that gives us a sense that they understand that it's not a healthy decision, and they're making attempts to do something about that. And at the high school, in our school-based health clinic, we have support available to students who want support to quit.
Let me just interrupt here. Are we functioning now?
I think so.
Kristen, can you get to where you want to be on this so that,
Yes, so the people who are visual have
Yeah.
something useful to look at.
sure.
Okay, so this is the website here. We want local reports. We want 2013 reports by supervisory union. So then we go down, you'll see all the SUs that are listed.
So wide participation.
Yeah, it's, like I said, it's the gold standard, and schools use the information to help guide programming. We use it in writing grants to get more resources. Okay, so where were we? We were talking about cigarettes, and we were going to go to marijuana, which is page 33. There we go. Oh, for heaven's sakes. Tim, can I ask you to get
Yes.
to the 2013 report so I can keep talking?
Yeah.
Well, thanks. So if we look at marijuana, I realize I'm not in a microphone.
It's picking up.
The number of students who report ever smoking marijuana is 44%. In the past 30 days, 23% of our kids reported using marijuana. Our numbers are consistent with the state numbers. The use of stimulants or painkillers, pain medication that's not prescribed to you. So again, this is an important area in terms of our local discussion around opiate addiction, because this is where in the survey this data falls. Students who have used a stimulant not prescribed to them or pain medication not prescribed to them. Ever is 13% of our kids have tried that. In the past 30 days, 9% of our students in grades 9 through 12 said they have used prescription medication in that way. Tim, if you go to page 34, that's where I am.
Okay.
Then if we talk about cocaine, those, our stimulant and pain medication number, I don't know if I said this, is consistent with the state numbers. We're not higher or lower statistically. Our students who report trying cocaine ever is at 4%. Hallucinogens is at 6%, which is lower than the state number. There we are. Keep going, we're up to 35. State data for hallucinogens is at 9%. Heroin, which has been a topic of conversation, and again, I want to highlight that we cannot talk about heroin use without talking about opiate use. Chemically, we're talking about the same thing. Heroin addiction or heroin use typically progresses from prescription pain medication use issue. So our students who report having ever used heroin is at 1%. We were statistically lower than the Vermont state data. Okay, so let me take a minute. That's alcohol and drug information that I was going to highlight. Questions, thoughts, reactions before we move into another section of the survey?
Dave?
Without necessarily being specific, trend-wise, are we seeing any changes?
Things are pretty stable. And actually, when I looked back at the 2011 numbers, a lot of things have come down. But I wouldn't say it's significant declines. Over time, we tend to see it moving comparably. So, I mean, in particular, alcohol was down from 32% in the last 30 days to 27%. One of the things I wondered about that I need to look into more as I was preparing for tonight is a lot of the data looks like it's gone down, but I know that the Department of Health analyzed and tabulated the data differently. They weighted it, and I don't know. They said that we should be able to still compare, and I'm not sure because so many sections our numbers seem to be lower. It made me wonder, did the weighting of data in some way affect that? But I'm not a statistician, so I don't know, but it's a question that I would want to ask our Department of Health partners.
Any others? We can move on then to the next section.
Okay. So the next one that I wanted to highlight for people is back to 22. Is an area about students' emotional health, mental health issues. There's two questions in the Eucharist Behavior Survey that pertain to that. One is the percent of students who have engaged in some self-injurious behavior that's not related to suicidal thinking. It's self-injurious behavior that's not suicidal is a coping skill, ineffective and unhealthy, but it's a coping skill that some people use when they're emotionally overwhelmed. So for our kids, the number of students who purposefully hurt themselves without wanting to die in the last year was at 16%. You'll see that's consistent with the state data. It's also not very different. Our 2011 data was at 15%. And then if we go to page 23, there's a question.
Do you want us to ask questions
Sure.
when it's on the screen? I just wondered why the discrepancy between males and females in that last one, was it 26 to 7? That seems
Yeah.
like, is there,
So, I think typically females, anecdotally in my clinical practice, I would say more females present with using that coping skill or strategy. But again, it's not to say that boys don't.
Can you give an example, Kristen, so
Sure.
people know what you're talking about?
So an example would be a student who cuts themselves or may burn themselves intentionally, pick until they've broken skin, scratching, things of that nature.
And just to point out, with our population, 16%, you're talking about 160 kids or so.
Yeah.
It's a lot of kids.
And so again, what that says is for those kids, one, we have to identify them, and I think faculty works hard to pick up on that and make referrals to support services. But we have to always be remembering that we have a responsibility to teach kids how to manage stress, how to handle feeling emotionally overwhelmed. Those aren't things that people just naturally know how to do. And for 16% of our kids, they've found an unhealthy way to do that. So if we look at kids who have an indicator of possibly being depressed, that's page 23, they were students who report feeling sad or hopeless for 2 weeks in a row in the past 12 months. That is one particular symptom of depression. This doesn't mean that these kids are depressed, but it's one indicator. 25% of our population in the high school report having this experience. So again, if you're coming to school and you're feeling sad and hopeless, it's hard to be engaged in your learning in the classroom. And we have to pay attention to that, identify who those students are, and make sure that they get the appropriate support so this doesn't escalate into a larger problem. And then, thank you so much, Tim, for helping me.
Absolutely.
So then when we talk about the issue of suicide, which it's really important that we can talk about it. It's not uncommon for any individual at some point to have thoughts about wanting to die. We have to make it okay to say the word and to have the conversation because there's a real difference between having the thoughts about it and then moving towards action. So the survey asks about the percent of students who've made a suicide plan. You'll see that we have 12% of our kids who report in the last year that they actually made a plan on how to end their lives. If you want to go down, and again, we're consistent with the Vermont state data here. Students who actually attempted suicide was at 5%. And again, this is really serious because for kids who attempt suicide, if they die by suicide, I mean, it's over. So we want to know anytime that a student is having thoughts about that it's, so we try and make sure we have a culture in our schools where kids know how to be concerned about a friend and kids know that who they should go tell and that it's okay to tell, and that we then respond in getting appropriate resources in place. Comments, questions, concerns?
I just want to go back to the male and female differences between all of them, and the numbers to me in terms of even right here, that between a 7 and a 3 could be significant, and I don't know whether they gave values to say whether these numbers are significant or not, but then the type of things that you indicated that was occurring in terms of the reason for those differences is what I wanted to make sure. Those are you contributing more to females are more likely to do those things than males, is what you're saying?
Well, and thank you. This is an important distinction to make gender-wise. Females statistically attempt suicide more often. Males die by suicide at higher numbers. And the reason for that is the method that females choose when they're attempting suicide versus the method that males choose. Males tend to use more lethal methods and die at higher rates. So it's statistically consistent that we have more females attempting. I mean, nationally, I think probably even worldwide, that's a consistent difference in gender.
Okay.
Okay, so the next section that I wanted to highlight is the sexual behavior section, and oh, so Tim, we're gonna go to page 42. I wanted to highlight this because Mount Anthony District, so the middle school and the high school in partnership, recently were awarded an Agency of Education grant to focus on the prevention of sexually transmitted diseases and HIV infection. That also, even though it's not in the title, it also prevents pregnancy. And so that is a 5-year, I believe, renewable grant that we're just getting started at looking at what does our sexual health curriculum look like, what does our, in the community, what is the adolescent access to sexual health services look like, and what is the climate in our buildings around having it be a safe environment for students who may be considering that they might be gay, lesbian, transgender, bisexual. So those are the 3 areas that the Agency of Education wants our schools to focus on. So if we look at our high school population, 47% of our kids report that they've had sexual intercourse. That is a higher number than the state number. Tim, if you want to go to 44. Of our students who report being sexually active, 12% of them report having used alcohol or drugs in their last sexual encounter. When we were doing our research on the grant, this data was interesting to me because I assumed that would be higher, and it's not. By and large, our kids are not under the influence of alcohol and other drugs when they're engaging in sexual activity. 12% is still 12%, but I thought it would be higher. So then if we go further down, just to highlight the condom use. So when we're talking about sexual health decision-making, for the students who decide to engage in sexual behavior, we look to make sure that they're taking care of themselves when they do that. 55% of our students report that they've used a condom the last time they had sex. That was statistically lower than the state, which was at 62. And we would want to see that number much higher in terms of protecting their physical health and preventing pregnancy. If you go to 45, Tim, the other, there are pieces of data around other birth control methods, but I wanted to highlight students who said they used no birth control method at all is at 18%. So that's almost 1 in 5 of our sexually active teens are not using any method of birth control.
Kristen, do we have within the high school or the middle school programs that address some of these issues that are brought up in this survey?
So certainly in our health curriculum, all of these topics are talked about. At the high school, health is a required half credit for graduation. Students, typically take it for 1 semester out of the 8 that they're with us. And I know here at the middle school, the health teacher here, in an age-appropriate way, addresses these topics for middle school students. And outside of that, I'm not sure where we're really hitting on it. I would say in our advisory program, which we call seminar, there are times that there are discussions and activities that connect to this, but in terms of direct curriculum, it would be the health classes. Okay, so then, the other piece around this that I wanted to highlight, I learned when our team was working on the grant, the Vermont Department of Health data indicates that 28 individuals in Bennington County between the ages of 13 and 19 had identified cases of chlamydia in 2012. It was the highest level in the past 5 years and 36% higher than it was in 2008. So, in addition to what our kids are telling us about the decisions they're making around sexual health, we also know that significant numbers of kids in Bennington County, they're not only SVSU kids, but significant numbers are having physical consequences to those decisions. The last thing I wanted to go over with you is in the assets section.
Just does anybody else have any questions on this particular aspect of the report? Okay, go ahead.
So Tim, if you can go to 54. The survey also asked students about the protective factors they're involved in. So when we're looking at students' resiliency and health, there are risky things that kids do or conditions in their lives that potentially can be challenging and difficult. But then there's also protective factors, and that's the assets, activities kids are involved in, connections they have with other adults. And so I wanted to highlight the number of students who volunteer 1 hour a week or more, because this is an asset. Kids who are more involved and engaged in their community are more likely to not have adverse effects from their risky behavior or even to engage in risky behavior. 54% of our students report that they volunteer 1 or more hour a week on average. If you go to 55, to the feel like they matter. This data is concerning to me, obviously, and then also to some other community groups who've looked at the data. The percent of students who agree that in your community you feel like you matter to people. This is an important protective factor. Only 38% of our kids feel like they matter. And it's significantly lower than the state number, which is at 50. The thing about the Youth Risk Behavior Survey is it tells us the what, it doesn't tell us the why. So the only way to know the why is to engage in conversations with our young people. So we did an activity through our seminar program where we asked kids to look at this piece of data and a couple of other pieces and asked for their feedback. Largely what they said, we asked the question, what did they want the community to understand about this, and what, I think we asked what would help. I brought it with me. By and large, our teens feel like there's not enough for them to do in the community, and that they would feel like they mattered more if there were teen-focused activities to do. I'm just going to look quick because I did bring that. We had 45 of our seminars, which included 532 students, give us this feedback and engage in the conversation. And what would make teens feel like they mattered more in the community? More teen-centered activities and places to go. These are, I'm going to give you the top 4. More opportunities to share opinions and be included in decision-making. Adults stop stereotyping and judging teens, interact with them personally and offer support. and opportunities to do community service and help others. Was specifically what our students said would help this issue. Any comments, thoughts, questions about that?
Does this question, do the answers to this question correlate with anything particular demographically, or I mean, the difference between the SU and the state is dramatic there?
Yeah, it's one of the more dramatic ones.
So any thoughts on what might explain that?
No. Again, this tells us the what, but not the why. And that's part of why we asked our students, help us understand this. What is this about? And that's, of the comments that they gave us, I grouped them into themes. And those, what I just listed, were the top 4 themes of what they thought would address this.
Did the question of sports come up at all? The availability of opportunities to participate in sports, and whether, if they're on a team, for instance, at Mount Anthony, and they were doing well, did they feel that, then they matter to people in the community?
It's not, the data isn't separated out other than by grade and gender. I can tell you that in the student feedback, there were some student comments said students should participate in more clubs, more activities. That was more related to the school question that we asked. So there are students saying that when you participate in stuff, you feel like you matter.
Right.
But it wasn't, in terms of the volume of comments we received, those were not high in numbers.
Thank you.
So the last, I'm sorry.
Well, what I'm trying to get my a grip on and understand here, over time, I see the difference between the state and making a comparison out there. And I hear some of the things that, the results of what you just mentioned, some of those. But what I want to know, over time, with what is Mount Anthony, if this is Mount Anthony, I mean, it started 9 through 12, a composite answer in terms of 38%. What was that last year and the year before, or the year before that, and what things that we put in place are some of those types of things that you talked about here that appear to be making a difference? And that's the only way that we're going to be able to put our hands around things and say we're going in the right direction or the wrong direction if we don't pull our data out from the state data and look at it consistently over time with some corrective preventative actions or steps in that. So I don't know whether you have that or not.
Yeah, I do. I can tell you in 2011, and this is not encouraging, in 2011 it was 41%. And I can tell you that this is a piece of data that we used in making our decision to move forward with a school-wide advisory program. How do we help every kid in our school feel connected to some adult, regardless of how many extracurricular activities you do or how you may excel in one content area or not. And I do have the year before that I can give to you later. I don't want to look it up right now, but I know that I have the 2009 number with me also. So I think, what we're doing about it is we're trying to talk with our students and ask them, what's going to help. The South Shire Substance Abuse Coalition in our community has also looked at this data. I shared with them what our students said, and from a community perspective, they're looking at, okay, so how can the community move on any of these suggestions by the kids?
Can I say one thing, Kristen?
Yeah.
When I read that, I think, yes, we've got to ask our students and talk, but I want to point out that our students are part of a family. Those families are part of a bigger community. And I don't think it can be just done at the school level. We need to do our part, parents need to do their part, our community needs to do, because that's a question about in their community. It doesn't say in
Yeah.
their school community.
And one of the things too, again, we don't, all we know is what this data says. In the seminar discussions, we did encourage seminar leaders to ask the students, when you filled this out, what were you thinking community meant? Did it mean did it mean your school community? Did it mean the town that you live in? Did it mean the whole SVSU area? Community can be interpreted many different ways. I don't have the feedback about how kids answered that, but it was part of the discussion that people were encouraged to have. Okay, and then the last piece that I wanted to highlight is, if you go to 56, Tim, and again, another asset is when kids feel like they have some inclusion in decision-making, and so we heard that, keep going, I want that one right there, yeah. So we heard that in terms of the community, that was one of the high ones. They wanted more involvement, they wanted their opinions heard and more involvement in decision-making. It's an issue too inside the school. So the percent of students who agree that students help decide what goes on is at 38%. The state number is 47%. Statistically, we were lower. When we asked the kids, I'm sorry, I should be saying teens, young adults. When we asked our students more about that and what would help, these were their top answers. Actually, we asked it a little differently. We asked them, what do you think is happening in the schools where students feel like they help decide what goes on in the school? So they said that students are happier, they're more involved, and they're getting better grades. So it's an outcome. We don't really know how they get there. More student input on decisions, and the Student Senate is more active in representing students and in making school decisions. Those were the highest ranking ones. So I think, for us, moving forward, we have to be talking as a school how we may think that we're including students in discussions. We're trying to use our seminar program that way. We certainly have clubs that get talked with, consulted. We have the Student Senate, but by and large, our student population doesn't see that or experience that as helping decide. And like, for example, I know that we had one seminar that had a concern about the condition of bathrooms. And they brought that concern to the administration. I think, Sue, what was reported to me was you said, okay, these are some things I can do right away. These are some things that are going to take a little longer.
Yeah.
And things happened immediately to help improve that. But we don't then communicate that out to the whole student body, that, there were 13 of you that helped make this happen here. So we have to look at making sure kids have the opportunity to be included, share their concerns and opinions, and that when it's responded to and they've helped make a decision, that it's shared and promoted so that all kids know that their opinion is valued.
Well, thank you very much. I think, Ed, go ahead.
I have one. I kept my question for the end.
Sure.
The Center for Disease Control
Yes.
created this survey. How do they validate the data?
Oh, I would have to be a statistician to answer that. I know that the questions go through reliability and validity. So the question they ask, the responses they get, do they answer what was asked? Are the responses consistent? Statistically, how they do that, I don't know. In the report, there is some description about how it's created, how it's statistically analyzed. But, I can't speak to it any more intelligently than that.
Thank you. I know some kids are gonna
Just-
tell the truth. Some are gonna,
Well, right,
Well,
and
it's
so,
all
the answer
right,
that they think
so
somebody
the
wants
question
to
you
see.
ask is the data valid? Right? And that's a very common question, it's reasonable and fair to ask. Within the survey, when, there are, I think I read 100 consistency checks. So if, in any particular student survey, if the data is not consistent, because it's asked a couple of times in different ways.
okay, that's what I was getting.
Yeah, so there are tools within the survey itself that would bump that data out.
Okay.
And then they've weighted the data so that the remaining data can be applied to the general population.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What, obviously, we could continue this conversation for this evening and many to come, but Kristen, I'd like to thank you very, very much. I did send a link to this website where you can pick up all that information. I hope that all board members got it, but in case you didn't, if I understood correctly, you can go to healthvermont.com, is that right? .gov, okay,
Yeah.
and you can click on it, and you'll get, I did it, I think it's 46 or 56 pages or something like that.
Yes.
But it not only contains the percentages that we've seen for the high school, but it also contains the percentages for the middle school. So it's a broad spectrum of things. And one of the things that we'll be talking about, Kristen, if we can work it out, is in the fall, we would very much like to have you come back and we'll get an indication from the board as to what they would like to see, more information or your thoughts on different areas that we could continue this discussion.
Sure.
But once again, thank you very much.
Thanks, Commissioner.
Well,
Leah,
that's what I wanted to make sure we follow with some action for next time, and what would help Bennington and help the people here is the type of question that I was asking about having trend data with actions in there. And you don't, I mean, that's a lot of different things. You may pick 3 or 4 topics and say, over 5 years, here's the things that we all done and that we put in place, and are these numbers significant or not in terms of the number of points along that line, so that we can have some real things to bite into in terms of corrective actions and fixes along that line. That's the only thing that's going to help us.
very good. Well, we'll be working on this, and the board will be discussing it. And again, on behalf of all of us, thank you very much.
Thanks.
I'd like to move on then. We have public comments. We have got a lot to cover on the agenda. Are there any issues that any public comments? Not, we'll move on then to financial report. I didn't see any hands go up. I'm sorry, yes.
That's all right, just Greg Van House.
Yeah.
Question on that report. Historically, how long have these surveys been going on? How far back can we go to compare that data?
1993 in the
1993.
SVSU.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I don't think that's available online, going back that far. We have hard copies in the building.
I don't know if you want to mention this in your chair of the Bennington.
Yes, we're honored to have the chair of the Bennington Board here with us, so we appreciate your coming, and we hope that the relationship between all school boards, but particularly this school board and the Bennington Select Board, will continue to be very workable. So be sure to keep us informed of things, and we will do the same to you. We can go on to the financial report. We have the treasurer's report. That's you.
Didn't know if you were just going to accept the report.
Well,
Like me to go over it?
No, would anybody like to go over it? It's pretty, do we have a motion then to?
I'll move it.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Excuse me?
We were voting to go over it or accept it?
No, we're just to accept it. If anybody would like to have more information on it, we certainly can provide it. Okay, we can go on. Budget status report is for your information only. Rick, I saw him here earlier. I'm sure he's still.
He's too
Oh, there he
good,
is.
yeah.
You're so slim, I hardly recognize you. See him. The grant anticipation note for the wood chips. Basically, you know that we are supposedly going to be reimbursed by the state, but until we do, we need to borrow some money to meet expenses.
Well, we're paying down the note, so we need to renew the note for $117,751.14.
Right.
We did pay down, we received $165,002 from the state, so we did pay that down on the note. So I just need it's going to be renewed for another year at 1.8%.
Very good. How much does the state still owe us, approximately?
Well, roughly that note amount,
That's what I thought, yeah.
and that is currently in the capital bill to be paid this next year, next fiscal year. Don't guarantee it's going to stay there. But they have been pretty consistent over the last couple of years, so
Very good.
I actually expect that we'll pay that off next year.
That's good. We get paid the principal, my understanding is, but we are not reimbursed the interest that we have to pay on the money that we borrow to meet expenses. So we need a motion to approve that borrowing.
So I'll move that amount, if you want to restate that number.
$117,751.14.
We also want a motion to waive the reading and approve the note, otherwise we might be here now.
Okay.
So all of that would be included in the same motion, is that okay? I mean,
Yep.
so I'll move that.
I'll second it.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Abstentions? Or voting no? Very good.
There's 3 places to sign.
Very good. Yep, just bring it on up and we'll get people to do that.
There at least one with a blue signature, please.
We have as you know, we talked about some of the things that needed to be done. We have a roof situation, and Rick is going to go over the bids that we have to fix the problem we have with the gym roof. Rick?
So, I hope everybody received the attachments as part of the amended agenda. I apologize that this came in late. The bids were open Thursday last week. And it was actually a pretty complicated bid if you read through it, with all the various alternates that could be attached or could be a part of this contract if necessary. I'm not going to read you the proposal that's in front of you. I'm just going to summarize it. We had 6 interested bidders, 5 actually bid. 1 was a non-qualified bidder because they didn't follow all the specs within the bid. So we had 4 qualified, very appropriate bids. If you look at the money, they're very close. So it gave us some assurance that everybody knew what they were bidding on. We're looking for approval. We're looking for the board to award the bid and the contract to Doxy Roofing, who is the low total bidder of $92,211. If you read through the bid, it is possible you won't spend that amount. Some of it is contingent on once they start tearing the roof off. Depending on the quality and the condition of the insulation underneath, we may or may not have to replace it. That cost is assuming we're replacing all of it. Probably won't be the case. That roof, we've been having difficulty. Tim's here, he can help with me, but we've been having difficulty over the last couple of years. It really turned into quite a problem this last winter. And there's a number of issues that have taken place up there with part of the cap has separated. There's some of the roof drains. It's what's considered a low slope roof. Everyone calls it a flat roof, but it's actually a low slope roof. It slopes into drains, and we're actually going with some bigger drains, inlets for those drains on the roof, and there's going to be a greater slope, so we're hoping to eliminate ponding. There's been some ponding up there over the last few years, and we believe that the new drains will help eliminate that, or hopefully will totally eliminate that. As is customary, even though this was a pretty detailed bid, we wanted to set aside some money for a contingency in case we ran into even something more unforeseen than we've already anticipated. We don't believe that'll be the case. We're putting a 15% contingency in there, roughly about just under $14,000. So we've identified $106,000 within your budget and some unspent line items, largely in salary and benefit breakage, through the staff of hiring that we weren't hired at lesser expenses than we originally anticipated. So that's really it. I could answer a lot of questions if you want. I mean, I think it's a.
I've got two
Yeah.
questions, really. I noticed in the bid that you had talked about using Firestone's rubber roofing, but it also said, or a substitute that would be of equal quality. I would hope that we would be as demanding as we can be to get that Firestone.
It is a Firestone roof.
Okay, but the bid says they could use something else. Okay,
That's pretty standard language, but it's hard to find a substitute.
okay. The next thing is, the fee for the engineering, is that included in that or not, or is that?
That is not in there. I don't know what that, no, I haven't seen that final number. That's probably going to be in the $4,000 to $6,000 range.
So that's part of that 106 or whatever? Okay. And if they do find wood, I mean, if we find certain areas where the moisture or whatever it is deteriorated the wood, that will all be looked at and done at the same time, and the engineering firm will be clerk of the works sort of thing? I mean, they'll be there to supervise it?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions on this? Yes, Dave?
We need an engineer because, is that the standard for a roof replacement, or is it because of the drains being widened, or?
We typically get an engineer because we want the industry's most up-to-date specs and their details and knowledge of the systems.
So they help put together the RFP?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they actually draw up all the specs. Jim and I went through them and adjusted them, but it's largely those specs. These are, the Firestone roof is what we've been using all throughout the district. We've replaced one in Pownell, one in Shasberry. Seems like somewhere else recently too. And it's a high quality, and those are the specs we want to use, and he's done the engineering on those as well, so he has all that data.
Ed?
Are these drains periodically cleaned as part of a preventative maintenance program?
Yes. I believe they're cleaned twice a year.
Are there any other questions on this? Dave?
How long did the last roof job last?
Well, it's been more than 14 years, I can tell you that, because it wasn't replaced since I've been around. Tim, do you have any recollection when the last one was done?
No, I don't. We've replaced so many roofs. I can remember having it placed, and at that point, I think Vermont Roofing did it. I really can't remember,
Tim,
but it
you
was a
got it?
long time ago.
In your timeframe, do you recall?
It ever being replaced in my 26 years.
That'll answer it.
It's been repaired.
Right.
It
Oh.
might be.
I doubt it's original.
Dave Frederickson, does that answer your question? Any other questions on that? Then we need a motion to approve the bid for Doxy in the amount of $92,211.
Yes, please. So,
Second.
Any questions, any comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? It passes. Rick? Credit card?
yep. Those of you that have been on the board for a few years may recall, 2 or 3 years ago, the board approved the use of a credit card at the high school. It's been in the name of Mike Malloy for a number of years now. through some of the changes that are taking place with the gate account and bringing that into the general fund. Tim and I have had numerous conversations about the convenience of the athletic department paying for some entry fees, in particular to like cross-country events, ski events that are a per participant cost. And we've come to the conclusion that a credit card in Tim's name would probably be and monitored and used as the same way that we've used Mike's card, which is under very strict control and requires numerous authorizations before it can be used, would be appropriate. So hopefully in your packet you saw a resolution that I need the board to waive the reading and to approve the resolution. And then who's your clerk in this?
Rob.
Rob gets to sign one of your premier duties. I've got the original. But it's, we think it's the most efficient way, and we feel very confident that we've got good controls on it. I think that we're hoping that you'll support the acquisition.
Rick, is your plan here just to have Tim be able to use it, or will he be able to give the card to somebody else to use, or what?
It'll be in Tim's name.
Yeah, the idea would be to make it accessible to the coach to take. And again, Rick touched on one, it's, with our cross-country ski team, for example, they leave, when they go to a race at, say, Mountaintop, that, we don't know until the day of the race how many skiers might be
No,
going.
I understand. I just wanted to clear it up, that it will be
So the
used.
coach would take the card, pay for the entry fee, and what we're trying to do is move away from so many reimbursements.
Sure.
Where a coach has to front the money and then be reimbursed, or when the wrestling team goes to New England and has to front $1,500 in lodging and then be reimbursed, they use the credit card. They're not being held accountable to front the money.
It seems to make sense, and being the clerk, you'll make up any deficit we have.
So,
We can take it
Do we have a motion? Yes.
well, I mean, I just got a question. We could move it, and then we can have a discussion.
Okay, well-
I'll move it.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes, what I want to know is what happens with the information. And I was one of those guys that said we should be using a lot more of those, and it should be to everybody's benefit to have them in their name, because those things allow you to track everything to the individual that owned the card. And they're responsible for all the things on there if we were to use them in that manner. And that's why that's a good question you asked, is somebody else going to be using them besides Tim? Because if everybody had their own card and everybody's responsible for all the items that went against that card, it would probably give you a smoother traceability system, a traceable system for where all the things are going and who's going with what electronically from the very beginning they're used on the card.
Well, that's a topic we certainly can bring up in a
Right.
finance committee meeting, and we will do that. But right now, we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye, or raise your hand. Opposed? Abstentions? That's it. Thank you. Rick, do you have the proper paperwork, and who does it have to be signed
I've got a
by?
couple things, and I do have one. Tim and I actually are going to tag team one thing under other, if you don't mind.
No, go ahead.
And it's really an informational piece. Tim can speak to the details, but more and more we're receiving multiple, or we're purchasing multiple pieces of equipment for phys ed and for athletic programs. And that stuff is, if anyone's been in the gymnasium, and particularly the balcony of the gymnasium, it is being socked in there and really taking up a significant amount of space. In addition to that, it is increasingly difficult for phys ed programs and athletic teams to have to haul that stuff up and down stairs, and some of it is actually rather large pieces of equipment, which is sometimes even dangerous to have people moving that stuff around up the stairs. So Tim has requested, Jim and I have been working with him for a couple months now, I guess, to try to figure out if we can build a small storage area somewhere out back on the north side of the gym, the east side of his office area, if everyone can kind of picture where that is. We're still in the drafting, kicking the tires type of stage. We want to bring the board up to speed, and if you're vehemently opposed, we're not ready to spend any money yet today, but if you're vehemently opposed in the idea, then I guess we'll stop and start to try to figure out something else. But if you understand the problem, and we'd be more than happy to answer questions, Tim would be more than happy to answer any questions. But if you understand the problem and the issues and understand that, you know, we're trying to find a solution to this problem and are willing to let us continue to work on it, I guess we'd be appreciative of that. Pretty much cover it, Tim?
Tim, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, there's the problem, and Dave, being a former PE teacher at the school, can attest to this, but there's no floor level storage area. You know, you've ever been in the gym, you know, you got the gym, you've got a couple areas around the corner, but there's one small closet around the corner where our ice machine is, but it also has a lot of electrical power boxes, which you can't really put anything in it because you have to have access, clear access, you know. But, you know, we're moving during the school day, volleyball standards, badminton standards, you know, hockey goals. I mean, the good news is our gym is used, you know, 7:30 a.m. to 8 p.m. at night, various different groups. The problem is that it's not just basketball, so things need to be moved in and out. The idea would have, you have a double door right off the gym. If you're facing the north basket, it's that big wall, there'd be a double door right there, so it'd be floor level, coming right into the gym. Things could be moved in and out very easily, not having to go upstairs and downstairs, and around corners, and so it's something that's really, really needed.
Rick, if it's agreeable to you and agreeable to Dave Frederickson, maybe you could include him. He's more knowledgeable than the rest of the board on sports and things, so that, you know, he keeps up on what you're doing and can report with you.
Yeah, the only problem I have with that is my experience with him in the past, I've had difficulty.
He promises to
Working
be,
under his guidance.
that's right, you did work under his guidance.
No, I'd be happy to.
Dave, is that all right with you?
Fine.
Good.
One of the things I will, and I don't, you know, we don't have any real numbers yet, but one of the things we're doing, because this isn't currently in the budget, either this year's or next year's budget, what we're currently trying to do is be creative and find a couple dollars this year to do, you know, maybe pour a slab, and then a couple dollars next year to try to, you know, put the building up or whatever it is. But once we get closer to that,
Sure.
we can try to solve it.
I just think that when you go into these things, it always, at least often, it seems as though they really, you know, you forgot this little detail or that little detail. You get construction plans going, and all of a sudden you realize you left some things out, and Dave may be able to help you with that.
Yep, no, be happy.
Very good. Is there any other questions on that? If not, we'll move on.
So you're saying okay to go? Did you
Just
ask
to
the
keep
board?
on investigating. We're not okaying anything.
Was that a
and-
consensus to everybody to say go ahead? Is that what you asked?
Yeah.
Okay.
Does anybody feel that we shouldn't be going ahead? I guess I should phrase it that way. That's okay?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to make sure everybody
Okay.
was on board. Dave is gonna be the point man.
That's right.
And we won't, you know, I mean, we're not gonna spend any money
Right.
until, obviously, you guys approve it, until we have a better comprehension of what we're trying to do.
Very good. We have a consent agenda coming up then. We have a motion.
So moved.
Have a second?
I'll second it.
Can I can I request that you amend that consent agenda with the voucher number 2018 I just handed you? Most importantly, what you'll see in there is the payment to People's Bank for the payment of the wood chip that Gail talked about earlier, as well as debt service payments for your bonds. Those are timely payments that had to be paid. Patty just added everything else that was in her work queue just to get them paid at the time, but the two big ones is debt service, basically.
Very good. We'll add those to it. I'm just having a motion, get it on the table, then we can discuss some of the things that are in the consent agenda.
We just need to make sure it's amended to include this.
Yeah.
I'll add that in as an amendment, as Fran would have.
Yeah, I'll amend the motion.
Okay.
Include that.
So you're amending or you're seconding it? Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstentions? Okay, it's on the floor now. Are there any comments or questions concerning the consent agenda? Do you notice that we did add another field trip, I think yes, we added another field trip to it that wasn't included in the original document that was sent to you earlier? If there are no other, excuse me,
Does
Ed.
it include the warrants, or?
Yes, it does.
Yes, it does, right,
I thought, I have a question.
yes.
On page, of the one you just handed out,
Yep.
on page 25, there's a $3,000 item for student stipends, work program account.
That's the Twilight program.
Okay, thank you.
Tim, may I ask?
Yes.
There's a nomination part of the.
Yeah.
I don't have it open in front of me on the computer, just decided.
Okay.
What's the market like for math teachers these days? How many do we interview? Or how close
I
is it?
interviewed 4. We had 14 applications, but
14.
out of those, maybe 5 weren't certified, or they've had 7 jobs in 8 years, and, that type of thing. So we called 5. One chose not to come for payment interview, and the individual that we'd like to hire tonight actually is out of West Rutland, and her job was put down to .6, which is why she's looking. So I think we were fortunate to find someone that was, she spent a day down here in some of our math classes with some of our math teachers at a different time than the interview, and it's not too bad. We also had a science opening and had a lot of, I'm seeing that there's not a lot compared to when you look at English and social studies, but there's some high-quality people that are looking for jobs.
Good, thank you.
Are there any other questions on the, yes,
I have
Rob?
one comment or question on the minutes.
Yes.
It's on page 1, I think line 29, it says something about Sleeman seconded.
That should be changed, I believe, to Johnson.
Thank you.
Okay.
Very good.
Field trips, when I was at home, I thought I saw 4. Now I'm on the site and I'm only seeing 2.
There's the third one.
Is it, how many we got?
We've got 3 that I see.
There's 2
3 and you just add,
No, 3 and, that we had 2 and we added a
Originally 2 and 1 new
third.
one for a total of 3.
okay, maybe I was looking at another bullet.
There are 3,
Okay.
okay? Are there any others? All those in favor of the consent agenda, saying aye.
Aye.
Signify. Opposed, abstentions? Very good. We can move on then. Administrators report. Sue?
Okay. I do want to report on the New England Music Festival, which was very successful. But before I do that, I want to follow up on an item from our last meeting, which was pretty controversial, and we were not happy about it. But in the March, if you recall, on March 5th, the New York Times, there was an article called "Heroin Scourge Overtakes a Quaint Vermont Town." And in that article, a local state police officer made the statement that all of the students are doing it, there's baggies in the hallways, and they're using drugs in the hallways. And at that time, we had a discussion about that and the lack of truth to that. And I want to let you know that after several phone calls, and really, this was driven by many of our students, a captain for the state police, pretty high up, Captain Walter Goodell, who happened to have gone to Mount Anthony High School years and years ago, reached out to us.
When you were there, Sue?
No, he went to Molly Stark. I happened to have him in 5th grade. That might have helped a little, but anyway, he came all the way down from Waterbury because he wanted to investigate after he started reading these letters to the editor that our students and classes were putting in. And he spent some time at our school asking a lot of questions, and then he made a second trip down with a letter from the head of the state police, from the very top, the colonel. And I just want to read a very small part to this. He said, "You are more than welcome. Please share it with your school board, share it with the press." So I just want to read this one part. It says, "While it is clear that Vermont, like many places across the nation, is struggling with a drug crisis that sometimes enters our schools, it was learned that Trooper Godfrey has no first-hand knowledge, nor has he ever seen bags of heroin in any high school within Bennington County. These comments were careless and inappropriate. The New York Times story was not fact-checked with the Vermont State Police, nor supported by statistics or reports from law enforcement." And then he goes on to say how he still wants to work with their agency wants to continue to work with our community and our schools. So I feel very good to now say that we have a letter from the head of the state police saying that that was based on nothing. And my next step is, I have this in a PDF, and I'm going to send it on to the author of that article, as well as her supervisor.
And I hope that we get it to our local paper too, and.
I see he's here, and I'll give you that.
Sue,
I
would
thought-
you also send it to the chair of the select board in Bennington?
Sure.
Thank you.
You know, and Sue, I know, because I talked to you a moment, that you spent a lot of time on this, and you put a lot of effort
She really has.
into pulling the type of resources that you have to get these people involved in it. And, you know, that's very much to your credit, but even more importantly, I think it portrays a more accurate picture of our school and our community. So on behalf of all of us, I thank you and everybody else.
And I think the students will appreciate
Well,
having that.
I'm gonna, what I was gonna do is take parts of this and send it out to our seminar and let the teachers, we talked about it at the head teachers
Yeah, we
meeting
had
today.
a very
so
good
the
article
students know.
by a teacher at the CDC. I forgot what his name is, maybe. Ed,
Mr.
you know?
Obenauer, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was a
Yeah.
very informative article, but there were just lots of, it wasn't just students.
Well, and it wasn't just students, but that's what really struck
Yeah.
the state trooper, the captain, was that the students were taking the time and the effort to say this isn't true.
Very good.
So.
Move on then.
Okay, so then the other thing, it says New England Music Festival, it was the 87th New England Music Festival. 444 students attended from Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Maine, and Connecticut. Believe it or not, we had 120 host families, and every student had a place to stay, even though Christina was still looking the Monday before they were coming on Thursday. Nathaniel was one of our student representatives in the chorus, but we had 4 chorus members, 1 band member, 1 orchestra member that came from MAUHS. It was 2 days of practice. There were concerts that were just fabulous, and a total of 1,060 people attended the concerts. So that's just some
Outstanding.
statistics. It was
That's great.
outstanding. It was a great few days. It went so smoothly, they want to do it again, and we never.
Well, this is this isn't the first time you've
Yeah,
done it.
this is the second.
This is the
posting.
second time.
This is the second. It's a tremendous amount of work.
It really is.
And once again, Christina, I know you did a lot, Sue, too, but I didn't know that she
Oh,
was
it's
the...
not me. It's Christina.
She did a great-
It's
and
Lynn
just-
Sweet, Marge Rowland.
and
There's
just-
people that
Really
really
have
did a
thank-
tremendous
On
amount.
behalf of the board.
On behalf of the board, I thank them very much for their efforts and the great success that it was. It wouldn't have happened if they hadn't put the
Right.
effort in.
Right.
Tim?
No report this month.
Very good. We can go on then, student representative?
All right, so one of the main things that's going on this week in particular at the high school is the band and choir trip to Virginia. And not every member of the band and choir has to go, but they have the option to going. I'm going. And we leave tomorrow morning and come back late Sunday night. And we have a performance on Friday that we do that's judged, and it's like a competition kind of. And then the next day we spend seeing parts of Virginia and like going to an amusement park. And then another thing, next week is the blood drive with the Red Cross. And
That the Student Senate runs.
right,
Yeah, Student
yep.
Senate's running, it's the 29th. We've had a good number of people sign up for it already, and we're continuing sign-ups throughout this week. Hoping to get, I think, 29 pints of blood is the goal this time, something like that.
Sue, I may be amiss here, but have we been introduced to the new representative?
Morgan, she's been here before.
Okay,
But who you are and what you do?
I'm sorry, I should know, but,
Alright, so my name's Morgan Howlett. I'm a junior. I play soccer at the high school, and I'm in the Interact Club, Student Senate, National Honor Society, and Spanish Honor Society.
Tell them what you do for a job, too.
Oh, and I work at the middle school after school in the Mosaic programs.
oh, really, good. Well, welcome, and we certainly appreciate the time and effort I'm sure you'll put in, and already have. Okay, we can move on then. Committee reports, Ag Committee, Nathan, or you, or Dave gonna handle this?
Yeah, well, the meeting on the 2nd was, as usual, very stimulating and important. And just to preface, this particular report, I think it's becoming increasingly obvious that we have to have more and more people interested in growing their own food. As many people are talking about, this is one huge way to stop global warming by decreasing the amount of energy that's used to transport the food to our mouths. There was a discussion on the last meeting there with the town to be sure any structures on the garden out here are in compliance with local ordinances. The composting initiative connected with the food service here is improving constantly. We're getting ash from the chip boilers analyzed to see how it could be used to improve the gardens. The American Chestnut Project, led by Marshall Case, is underway. Compost sources are regularly discussed for the garden. There's plans for a pavilion that are also underway. It's very difficult in the summertime to conduct classes when the sun's too hot or when it's raining. So then there's a great need for some kind of a shelter out there that classes can be conducted under in those circumstances. And then various relevant events were discussed as far as the information or sharing ideas with the community. I'd say it's a very vital, inspiring committee to work with.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Yes.
I would like to just ask the board, they would like to have a presentation, Nathan, from the American Chestnut Nursery project by the students and Marshall and the teachers, because this is a very specialized project of trying to reintroduce American chestnut trees, and it's got a very interesting history. So I suggest that maybe for a future topic on your agenda.
Great.
Any other questions? We have two members of the Agricultural Committee. Dave has volunteered to help with Nathan on it, and also they are on the Food Service Committee, which is, it all ties in very much.
Right.
Even though it isn't on the agenda, Fran, do we have something from SVSU?
I don't believe so.
Eddie, Leon, anything from SVSU that you know of?
Oh, to report on?
Yes.
I was getting ready for policy.
Yeah.
We're still
You have
looking
something?
at and talking about superintendent search.
Okay.
This is the main thing.
Okay, Fran had something.
At the last legislative breakfast on April 7th, a lot of the legislators were there, and instead of us asking them questions about what they're doing up north, they want to hear from board members, MAU, SVSU, what do we think about certain things, what do we need? So instead of us doing that, the next time we have a legislative breakfast, and I believe it's June 2nd, if more board members, even if board members can't make it, if they can give us, I'll make it, I'm sure Larry will be there, if we can hear from other board members on certain things they want to ask, and we will ask them.
Yeah,
report back.
I think that's very, very important. Be sure
Yeah.
to mention at the next meeting, we'll have another meeting in May.
Yeah.
And it'll be a
Yeah,
little
I'll
bit
announce
closer.
it, yeah.
Okay, very good.
And I'll do it at the SVSU on the 30th.
Any other questions?
Well, no questions, I just wanted, we didn't have it down, but policy committee.
Yes,
met.
we've got policies down.
Did I miss it?
Should,
It's-
number 10. Not there
I
yet.
can't wait.
Go
It
ahead.
says none. You got none, and I wanted to say. We
Yeah,
got no policy, but we met.
we're trying to just to give you a chance, Leon.
We don't have any that are ready. The policy committee met, and so, some of the items that was a concern to Mount Anthony that was discussed was the student nutrition and wellness policy. We had a lot of conversation for that policy piece and getting everybody to understand the definition of what campus meant between the adjoining school district of the Southwest Vermont Career Development Center and what information, what constraints will be that we have in place that will affect them and so forth along that line. So it was a lot of discussion along that line in terms of enlightening everyone to understand that they're two separate buildings.
Very good.
Along that
And
line.
and I would hope that you would consult Dave and Nathan on that. That's their responsibility and
They
the
have
thing
a
they're
lot
working
of,
on.
lot of members there and so forth along that line and
Can we
support,
take a
so.
minute just to talk about?
Yeah, sure, definitely.
There was an article, I think, in the Banner about it. I think that's where or maybe it was minutes of the policy committee meeting that I read, but is the issue that the CDC, it's the store at the CDC, then the question of whether students can leave our building, go into the CDC building during lunchtime and buy a bag of potato chips? Is that what the
Right, that's the issue.
challenge is?
Right, there's some kind of federal regulations that the food service has to ascribe to. And it basically amounts to the fact that, Rick Pembroke was here, he talked to somebody in Washington actually, and they really couldn't resolve the fact that that store, which is not part of MAU, is a different supervisory union really, has to be closed off from Mount Anthony's side of the building, which is nonsense. So there's really no resolution to the problem at this point. And whether this is going to somehow jeopardize the $2.5 million or whatever it is we get for food service at Mount Anthony because of their audits, we still don't know.
And the CDC doesn't have to follow the
The
same.
CDC does not have a food service, so they don't have to follow those rules.
It's a technical educational building, and that's what the thing is about. All of the things that they're doing in terms of a store, a cosmetology, whatever it is all part of the CDC program, a technical education program. So you can't take the programs and tell them what they can't do. Another district can, and so forth along that line. It's just so happened we have to be jointed, and they don't have a food service. So be for sure that everything that's happening, the two directors are talking to each other. We're trying to make sure that the board's members that are across between those minimize the effect that whatever Mount Anthony's goal and philosophy is in trying to achieve something is also heard there, and everything is being done to try to make sure that we minimize, or they minimize, and whatever that is on that behalf, that at least so that it wouldn't hurt program, but whatever the program is, and it has to be a program, it needs to be there. So I just happen to have cross hats.
Very good. Well, I'm glad you brought it up, and it falls right into the general category of things that you and Nathan are working on. So that's good.
One of those
Yep.
sidelights, these policy drafting committee meetings are on CAT TV, channel 16, and there'll be one play tomorrow at 2 p.m., Saturday, the 26th, it plays at 9 p.m. You can call CAT TV, anyone interested in seeing these policy drafting committee replays, and ask them when it is. But there are 5 more of this program, coming up.
Thank you. Superintendent's report.
Yes. On the agenda is the Vermont School Boards Association training that was hosted at the CDC on March 31st. I believe we had David attending, Fran and Leon from the MAU. It is an annual training that's provided. Other board members from other school district boards were there, as well as the SVSU board, and was a successful training. There is an opportunity for boards to have specialized training from the association for your own particular board for specific topics, and you can see those topics on the website if you went, if you would just go to the Vermont School Boards Association website. And then I did want, it wasn't part of the school reports, but I did want to highlight as well the very successful second year of a concentrated effort to provide a career week, and thank everyone. The work was enormous. The participation of the students very good. This year at the high school, 24 professionals, business, industry, and government individuals came to the seminars for grades 9 through 11. Last year it was the senior seminars to present and answer questions for students. Kristen, thank you, and all your colleagues for all that, and Sue for that organization of that. I want to make note of it because it was so successful, and we're hoping to continue it year after year. And also because at the BCIC, which is the Bennington County Industrial Corporation annual meeting today, it was noted and commended. So thank you to everyone that participated. Tim, there were also programs at the middle school as well during that week. So thank you, and we'll look forward to continuing next year. It's really part of a total SVSU effort to become more involved in economic development and workforce development in the region. So, thank you.
Very good.
That's it.
Very good. Just a couple of things. We will have a May meeting. It's the third Wednesday of the month. I'm not sure what date that is. If anybody has a calendar, that would be helpful. One of the things that we will be discussing then, I've spoken with the administration, and they are going to inform us, make us better aware of the Common Core and what it means and how well we are preparing for that event. In other words, what we're doing to be able to give our students and our teachers the best opportunity to do the best job they possibly can. So it's not going to be a full, in detail presentation, but it should give us an overview of what the Common Core is, what kind of demands they will be making on our teachers and students, and what we're doing to be able to prepare for it. One couple of things that I would like to just discuss in the future, really, that I put on the information sheet that I sent you, the assignment sheet that I sent you. We'll be having next year, after we begin the next academic year, we'll be having some discussions concerning 3 areas and probably a good deal more. And those areas that we will be discussing will have to do with sort of things like sports and drugs and computers and things. And the board members will be working with the staff to make those presentations. The other thing that I've asked the administration to do for the coming year is to come up with some goals that we can establish at the beginning of the year in some objective way that we can take a look at how effectively we are reaching those goals. And I don't know what they're going to be. The administration is going to come up with those goals, and they're going to be reviewed by the board, and then hopefully we'll put them into place. But an example of one may be that we might want to see if our truancy rate is X, we may want to see by the end of the year that it is at Y. Or we may want to see that the number of students that are going on to some postgraduate education, presently it's X, and maybe we want it to be Y. But I think that it is important for us to set goals and then have some way of evaluating how well we are doing in reaching those goals. So it's not going to take place till next year, but just kind of a warning. The other thing is that I'd like us all, and obviously myself included, is to try to work out in your schedule a time to visit the schools. I think that one of the things that makes us better board members is to have a close association, or as close as we can, with what's happening in the schools. And I've spoken with the principals about this, and obviously you would go to them and let them know that you're coming, and they certainly are receptive to that. And that would be something that, we could do at any time, but certainly I want to see us all make the effort to go into the schools and look at what's happening in those schools and try to have a better feeling of what's going on. Those are just some of the things that at least I'm thinking about, that we all should be thinking about for the remainder of this year and for next year. Are there any other issues that should be brought before this board? If not, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And just before you do it.
Yes, go ahead.
May 21st is the next.
Oh, thank you, Leon.
Meeting.
May 21st, it'll be held here, and you'll be getting more information.
26th is the senior- May 22nd is the senior trip, so I gotta go home early.
I can guarantee
The next night, I have
it.
to sit in the hallway all night.
Once again, Kristen, I'd like to thank you for your effort. I think we all enjoyed it. We have a motion on the floor to adjourn. All those in favor? Very good.
Just so you know, it didn't get seconded.